I want you to move from overwhelmed by information to confident in what really matters. I want to help you move from being unsure towards direction and purpose in your healthcare. I want to introduce you to health experts. I want to let you in on tough conversations on women's health. I want to give you a place where you can lean in and learn how to take care of yourself. Let's transform your health. Let's get clear on your goals. This is Women's Health Unplugged. I'm your host, Dr. Jordan Robertson, naturopathic doctor.
It's my birthday. I never used to be a birthday person. I think I had this negative concept of what being a birthday person actually meant. I wouldn't take the day off work. It didn't really matter to me if we did anything. I didn't expect any presents or anything special. And yeah, I was not a birthday person. The older I get, the more I'm turning into a birthday person, and the more excited I am to celebrate my own birthday. Some of that has to do with my kids. They are always so excited when it's my birthday. Like, it's something special for them. And I realize that, like, honestly, if we can't celebrate our own birthday, like what are we doing here? And so over time, I have become a bit more of a birthday person, and I look forward to it. I look forward to telling people it's my birthday. I tell people my birthday is coming up. I am way more of a birthday person than I used to be. I do use my birthday as a bit of a reflection point, and because it's early in the year, it's commonly connected for me with thinking about my goals for the year, my personal goals or my professional goals. And so I'm lucky because I kind of have this, January baby situation where New Year's and my birthday are kind of back to back. That said, I actually had a hard time thinking about what I wanted to share on this podcast. I wanted to do something about aging and the things that I'm thinking about as I head into, I'm 42. Did I say that? I'm turning 42 today. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things I'm thinking about as I'm aging. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things I've noticed in the last year with respect to aging and the things I'm going to actively do to try and circumvent that. I also was going to talk about some of the things I'm not tolerating anymore in this 42nd year. If you grew up in the 80s, I always think about Level 42. Whenever I say that I'm turning 42, I think about the band Level 42. My dad was like an avid Level 42 listener. If you are not an 80s baby, then you probably can't understand that reference, and that's okay. But things I'm sort of no longer tolerating this year. We often hear that narrative of women feeling less apologetic in their 40s, feeling more empowered in their 40s. And so I wanted to share some specific things that I was not going to be apologetic about anymore. I'm not a very apologetic person, so I probably wasn't that apologetic for them before, but I'm sort of naming it going into the year this year. So I've enjoyed being in my 40s. I was happy when I turned 40. My birthday was in the middle of the pandemic, just like everyone celebrated birthdays in the pandemic. My family made it so special. We were supposed to go out in a limo to a super nice dinner. And then we had that like other wave of lockdowns where I live in Ontario. And we ended up taking the limo to pick up dinner, kind of like Uber Eats style, and then driving it home and eating it at home. That was my 40th. And things that I've noticed over the last 2 years, like I definitely feel like my body is aging. I feel like my recovery is poorer, that I require more sleep to have the same feeling. It's not like an amazing sleep makes me feel amazing. It just makes me feel the same. And if I get less sleep, then I don't feel good, versus being able to like get by with less sleep. And then if I got an amazing sleep, I was like, watch out, I'm totally running for prime minister this afternoon. And now I need a really good sleep just to feel like okay. I definitely have more body pain. I've gone through like a big investigation over the last 6 months for some chronic knee pain. I've had knee pain since I was like 16 as a competitive curler. I just went through this massive investigation for it, which is probably a conversation for another day, because I had a false positive on my MRI that said I had a torn tendon, quad tendon, which put me into this massive like depressed situation, because I thought I was going to have to go in some kind of like immobilized boot for 3 months while this tendon healed. And turns out it was just a shadow on the MRI, because my tendons are calcified from lots of use in my life. But I definitely have more joint pain. I don't have arthritis in the knee that we investigated, which is lovely, but I definitely have that feeling of like my joints don't operate the way that they used to. I definitely have more morning stiffness and more like general overall pain. It takes me way longer to get moving. And takes me way longer to recover physically. And that's without doing a ton differently, right? Like there's been times when I was in my 30s where if I was cutting corners in a lot of areas, hydration, fueling, sleep, or if I was really overdoing it in the gym, I'd be like, yeah, I can't recover. And it's because, and I could like put my finger on it. Whereas this feels very different. This feels like my recovery isn't awesome, and it's because I'm getting old. That's how it feels. And I'm not resentful of it. I'm quite grateful that I can move as well as I do, and that I continue to move as well as I do. It's interesting. It's changed my feeling about my Olympic lifting, because now I think about the sport from the perspective of, I need like really good mobility to be in this sport, and it's helping me stay mobile as I move deeper into my 4th decade. So I actually am thinking of my lack of recovery and all of those pieces more fondly than I'm maybe making it sound. I'm noticing it and I'm listening to it, whereas perhaps in my 20s and 30s, it didn't really matter how I felt, and I could just kind of plug through. And I never really had to listen to what the signals and signs were, but I definitely need to do that more now that I'm in my like deeper into my 40s. And I know I'm only 42, but that's one of the things I've noticed in this decade. I do notice that I'm more sensitive to my own hormone changes as I move into my 40s. And that's a common phenomenon that we see in patients. It's talked about a little bit in the literature about like worsening PMS and worsening symptoms as we encroach in perimenopause. I actually don't meet the diagnostic criteria for perimenopause. I don't have perimenopause. I'm not in perimenopause quite yet. But I definitely feel this different sensitivity. Again, this is a thing. A different sensitivity to those hormone transitions, even though they're the exact same hormone transitions that I've been experiencing my whole life. When I used to describe this to patients, I would say, like, did you know when you were ovulating when you were like 17? Patients would be like, no, like that was not a thing. We didn't know that we were ovulating. And yet at 40, I think I can really easily be like, oh God, like this is a thing now, right? Like I notice that change. I don't feel quite like myself. And I'm sure that part of that is tracking and acknowledging and knowing where you are in your cycle or where I am in mine. However, we do know that there's this sort of phenomenon that as we age or get older, that our resiliency around those hormone transitions starts to wane a little bit. And then so we feel those symptoms more significantly than we maybe did in other decades. So it's important and kind of interesting to note. And I wanted to make a comment that I notice it too. The other thing that I've noticed just health-wise is that I'm definitely making more like prevention-based decisions than I used to, right? Like things used to feel kind of far off in the distance. Like I should lower my sodium, but I really want to put some salt on this, right? Or I can have red meat once a week. And you know what? If I had it 3 times a week in a certain week, that would be fine, right? It's hard to make changes about prevention when you're in your 20s and 30s, when a lot of the things that we're talking about don't show up in your life until your 50s, 60s, and 70s. But I am noticing that about myself, that it feels easier to make some health choices that are more prevention related, or I'm seeing the potential benefit of doing those more acutely than I used to in the past. And I think that's partly because I'm like actually physically getting into that window of time where maintaining my muscle and decreasing saturated fat and decreasing my sodium intake and all of those pieces probably have a much more tangible outcome in the next 15 years. Whereas when I was 25, like in that moment, I was probably like, who cares? I do notice that like in my decision-making process around my health, it feels less about like the here and now, feels a little bit less about like aesthetics, which is nice, and a little bit more about like heart health, you know, the things like osteoporosis, some of those pieces that are going to show up over the next like 2 or 3 decades for me. And that actually feels nice. It feels like a relief to make some health decisions around those particular instances. And if you're listening to this and you're like, I don't even know how I would make decisions related to my osteoporosis risk. I mean, remember, I live with me, right? Like I get to make those decisions for myself because my knowledge is there. I don't actually expect you to be able to do that. I actually would encourage that you work with someone who helps you develop that plan and then you stick to it, right? But remember, I get to live with me every day, which sometimes is annoying. But those are the things I've noticed about my health over the last year or two as I'm moving into my 40s, is that I definitely notice the hormone transitions more. I definitely have more pain, more body pain, and I don't recover as well at all. And it feels easier for me to make decisions about my like cardiometabolic health now that I'm 40. I don't know. It feels like I'm like moved into this other sphere where that's a thing that I'm going to think about now. So health-wise, that's kind of what I noticed. But I will say that I am very fortunate that I am in quite good health at 42. You know, I have my own things, but they're generally manageable. And I have a lot of gratitude for how healthy I am at 42, because I know that that's good health is not accessible to everyone who's probably listening to this podcast. And then there's the like other side of being, you know, turning 42 or having a birthday and things that I was thinking about sharing. And the list honestly started as a like things I'm no longer tolerating from myself as I turn 42. And the idea for this actually stemmed from seeing a string of I noticed something about myself, and I was quite happy with this change in automatic thought. When I was growing up, we had this like little game that we would play, and as we watched people put out their Christmas lights, and it was called "Why Would You Bother?" Right? Because I'm sure that you've seen the like, so, you know, the one little plugged-in wreath that has, you know, some missing lights on it on someone's doorstep, or someone would have a string of lights that looked like they'd kind of thrown them from the front step and they had kind of landed in the tree haphazardly, and they were kind of plugged into some kind of extension cord. And aesthetically, you're kind of like, okay, that doesn't look great. And also, why would you bother? And that became the title of of this game. Is it was like we called these houses of "Why Would You Bother?" And even as I'm saying it, it's like so cringe, right? That That first of all, it even mattered what other people were doing with their Christmas lights, but that we were kind of, joking about it, that there were these houses that would barely put up any decorations, and we were like, you maybe just shouldn't have put up decorations at all. And this year, unconsciously, as I was driving home one night in the dark, I passed this house that had like a half string of Christmas lights out on their front porch. And they had put them into sort of whatever flower box was already there outside of their house. And so I was a little bit far. I live in the country, so the house is set back a little bit. But you could see that they had kind of shoved this half string of Christmas lights right outside the door into the flower box, and the lights were white and they were on. And my immediate thought was, that must bring them so much joy. And it was interesting because it was only my second thought that I went, do you remember way back when I would maybe laugh at that? I would laugh at that string of lights and say, that's so silly. Like, why would they bother putting out those Christmas lights? And this year, and probably years before that, I was actually acknowledging it this year because I noticed the thought pattern. This year, I was like, I hope that those little lights out there bring them joy. And as I finished my drive, and my drive is very long these days, I have lots of time to think. And I got to thinking about the contrast between those two things and what the meaning behind that change of thought was. And then that started into, I promise there's a purpose to this story, started into like, what else am I no longer tolerating from myself? But it started with seeing this little string of Christmas lights, because my thought to myself was, I'm not tolerating that level of, I guess it's judgment. Like, I could literally use that word to describe, or even caring what other people are doing, especially if it brings them joy. Like, why were we even bringing in this perspective onto someone else's Christmas decorations when the more likely is that it brought them joy? And if it didn't bring them joy, and they also felt like they wished they had more than one string of Christmas lights out on their decorations, that they didn't need me feeling badly about their decorations, that they were maybe struggling and they wished they had more decorations for their family. And I want to be in a space where I can hold so much compassion for that family, and also sit in the joy for that family that they got to decorate and that they managed to figure out how to get those little lights out there. And it sparked this thought in me as I turned 42 that, what else, Jordan, are you not going to tolerate from yourself anymore? And the rest of my list is not maybe quite as profound as that. That one I enjoyed, and I liked thinking about that after that day. That I was proud of myself for that level of growth, to be able to be like, my previous many, many years ago automatic thought would have been, look at those silly lights. And now my automatic thought is, I hope that family has what they need, and I hope that those lights bring them joy. And I'm sure some of that has to do with just getting older, right? And having more perspective. But I also think in the last few years, if you've been paying attention and if you've been trying, you've been given, and I've been given, a lot of opportunities to think about things like privilege, think about things like connection and community and judgment and joy and all of those pieces. And I was so happy that my automatic thought was compassion. Anyways, it made me think, okay, for your, as you turn 42, like, what else are you not going to tolerate, Jordan? And more of the examples actually ended up being personal. And I think when we're setting those kind of personal goals, the things that we can control is how we react in those moments. And I think the rest of the list actually probably sounds a bit more shallow than that example. However, that story was what prompted me to even think about what are you not going to tolerate this year from yourself? So one of them is not showing up 100% for myself physically. And I know I said earlier in the episode that I have been sore, right? I've had a lot more body pain after 40. I also, because I haven't felt particularly resilient in the last couple of years with respect to my exercise and at the gym, I've had a F ton of injuries over the last 3 years. It feels like I'm injured more than I'm not injured. And that's actually really prevented me from showing up for myself fully in my exercise. It means that I very rarely push myself to failure. I kind of just go through the motions and do the repetitions that are prescribed for me without pushing myself to that level that's probably required for me to see substantial change. And so one of the things that I would like to stop tolerating from myself is not pushing. It's like I haven't been pushing myself to failure. And probably in any regard, actually. I have not been pushing to failure. And when you're weight training, going to failure means that you work until you cannot do a rep anymore. So you would start the squat and you cannot get up and you have to bail and let the bar get off on your back. Or you go to pull up your last deadlift and you actually can't even get it off the ground, right? Because you failed. That's working to failure. And the amount of energy and nervous system that it takes to recruit, you have to recruit to do a lift that you are not going to make is incredible. And there's probably someone who knows way more than I do about that particular physiological stressor, but really lots of progress is made by going to failure. I know you don't always have to go to failure, but I'm just saying that moving to that level of exertion actually has lots of positives associated with it. And I have generally worked below failure or below that threshold for a long time in the gym. And part of it is due to injury, but also part of it is due to almost being afraid to push that hard because I don't want to be tired or exhausted by the work. And I think that's important to acknowledge, when we're exercising or we have our relationships or work, all of those things are happening together in this big vortex, maybe unless you're a professional athlete. And your work is going to influence your gym and your gym is going to influence your, energy at home and all of those things. When we're not feeling particularly resilient overall, all of those things become stressor, and all of those things will contribute to our feelings of exhaustion. And so over the last couple of years, I definitely have been afraid to be that bone tired from my exercise and have worked sort of that sub-threshold all the time. And that is something I would like to change at 42. I do have some goals of gaining strength and gaining muscle in the next year. It's possible, but it's not as possible as if I just leaned in and worked a little harder. So it's something I want to just acknowledge for myself. I was talking about it out loud with some friends at the gym the other week and saying to myself that this year I would like to feel like I'm rested enough when I do get to the gym that I can actually push it to that level of failure. The other thing, and this is again out of left field and way less inspiring than my first Christmas light example, is I would like to this year embrace more AI. I'm trying, okay? When you own a knowledge-based business, AI can feel quite threatening, right? Because it feels like it's just going to replace all the people and all the things where we disseminated knowledge. And at this moment, AI does not do as good of a job at understanding your hormonal condition as I do, nor does it read and critically appraise literature as well as I do. It probably will in the future, but right now it doesn't. And one of my goals in 2024, or the things that I'm not going to tolerate from myself, is just pretending that it doesn't exist, first of all. And I would like to lean in and be and embrace where it can actually support me in my work and support you, right, in your journey. I don't want it to feel like this push-pull, like I'm sure physicians felt when we invented the internet and all of a sudden patients could go and Google their symptoms. I don't want to feel that way about it. I think that there's actually some very beautiful things that we can do with AI to help support physicians. I also think there's some beautiful ways we can use AI to help support patients. Where that gray line or zone is going to be, where we try and ask it to do the things that do require individualization and sensitivity and strategy. I think that that's probably where it's going to fall short, at least for the next couple years, until we're all replaced by robots. But that's one of the things that I don't want to really tolerate from myself this year, is just ostriching my head in the sand. And I've actually I'm taking a 6-month AI course actually to get better at it and to better understand it. And we're investing in an AI-based search platform for the Confident Clinician so that we can start to embrace, right, this possibility, which I think is really amazing. But that's something that I'm not tolerating from myself at 42. And then the last thing that I wanted to share that I'm no longer tolerating for myself. And this is going to sound like, when it's like, what are your weaknesses? Or my weaknesses that I don't have any weaknesses? It's going to sound like one of those kinds of things. But truly, if you ever had this experience, you'll know that it's actually quite difficult to stop doing things because you're good at them. Right? Like, if you're good at something and if you've trained really hard to do something and you're exceptional at it, but you don't need to do it or don't want to do it anymore, it's difficult to step away. And I think that kind of sort of gold star culture that we live in, right? When we're good at something, we get so many external accolades and external validation that what we're doing is so great that it's hard to move away from that, especially if it's one of the primary areas where you're receiving love and recognition. To then make a conscious decision to no longer do it is very difficult. But one of the things, or one of my goals in 2024, is to stop doing things just because I'm good at them. Being good at something is actually not alone. Being good at something alone is not a good enough reason to continue to do something. So I've actually taken a step back from practice. And that's something that I was very good at. And if I worked with you in the past, hopefully you felt that way. But I'm very good diagnostician, very good strategist, very good listener, very good at helping people figure out what the next best move is for them that's going to have the greatest impact, the greatest amount of change. Very good at working with conventional care and helping meet people's goals while holding space for the conventional medical model. Very good at all those things. However, in this moment, there is a few other things that I need to be doing to meet my impact goals, which is helping support other clinicians do these things too, and to help them be able to show up in their work with the level of confidence and capability that I know that can really change the game for integrative medicine. And if you've been following along, you know that I, in 2021, launched the Confident Clinician, which is a online practice support database for integrative medicine professionals and naturopathic doctors, where we're putting my research And now the research of 50 other women, actually, we've grown the team to include 50 people that are in that sort of like education space to support the 600 practitioners that are currently in the program. We're putting that information, that critical appraisal, that ability to disseminate information and create clarity and confidence in other clinicians. Can I say more C words? We're doing that in a way that actually means that they get to impact their patients every single day. And even though me working on one-on-one with people was great, and I, for 15 years, was really filled up by that experience, I know that for me to hit and meet my impact goals, that I need to move into a space where I can facilitate and mentor other clinicians, that I can create the framework and infrastructure for other clinicians to be supported so that they can show up for their patients. Because if I help them, then they can help you even better. And if I step into that role even in our own clinic, where I can support the 7 women that work for me right now, the impact is so great, because the number of people that they can impact as a team far exceeds the number of people that I could see on my own. And so in the interest of really changing integrative medicine, I had to get out of being by myself in my office with one other person and move into a space where I could help thousands of clinicians help thousands of patients. And that feels really good, but really weird to stop doing something that you're so good at, right? And I probably stayed in practice a little bit longer than I could have, but it was a very difficult thing to move away from, because it was something that came so naturally to me and was so easy, and I had trained for so long to be so good at it. And I'm sharing this for a couple of reasons. One, I want to give you the inspiration that if you're doing something right now that you're good at, but it's getting in the way of you doing the thing you're supposed to be doing, you can stop. You can even just stop for a little while, but you can stop. I also want to share it with you because it felt weird not to tell you. Definitely feels a little bit, or at first it felt a little off-brand to not be seeing patients one-on-one, especially for all the things I stand for and all the things I want for you and for us. Better access to women's health care, for me to step out of being able to actually physically provide that myself. But I have to know that I'm moving into a space where I can help you get it in a totally different way, in a probably more meaningful and impactful way. So that's it. Those are my 42-year-old things. There's things that I'm noticing about my health, and there's things that I'm just not going to tolerate anymore from myself. I hope you enjoyed listening to the episode. And if your birthday's coming up, and even if it isn't, it's New Year's, whatever, it's a good time to do these reflections. I think it's helpful to kind of notice these things. What did you notice in the last year about your health and well-being? And what going forward do you need to not tolerate any longer for you to be on the path that you're proud of? They're great questions to help you get oriented with what's important and what matters, and also can set the stage for how you show up for yourself over the next year. We can all say we don't want heart disease, but what that really means is we need to be choosing it every single day, right? We can all say we have impact goals, but it's a very different thing to choose it every single day. And becoming intentional about what you want is the thing that sets you on the path towards saying yes to it every single day of the next year. I hope you enjoyed the episode. I hope you have a wonderful day. I'm going to have an awesome day. It's my birthday.
I hope you enjoyed that episode of Women's Health Unplugged. My goal is to help you feel more confident about your health. Please remember that what we talked about today in the podcast does not constitute medical advice, nor was a doctor-patient relationship formed. If you have questions about your healthcare or about how today's topic pertains to you, please take it up with your family doctor, your specialist, or someone on your health team.